Hey everybody! Today, let's take a look at this, like wipe coding a full agent, but uh, without really interfering with the process. And we'll use this spec file to hopefully ground the cursor agent, so it won't make catastrophic changes. And I will talk about this cursor becomes any app approach, either with tools or rules. I have posted some stuff on Patreon about this, like converting cursor to a deep researcher or giving it tools without using MCPs. We'll take a look at that. And also, this was interesting. I did this last night, like researching with LLMs, but only with web search. The reason for this is that if you want to research something and you give deep research a single question, a lot of times like ChatGPT, deep researcher will ask you questions, but sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask. I found that researching LLMs with just the web search on, but going a little bit at a time, actually makes a difference because it gives you all the context. You can copy it into another LLM to summarize and things like that. Essentially, it's doing deep research manually. So I thought this was useful, so we'll take a look at that. But let's begin with this agent building, which was pretty fun. Let's begin here from scratch. Now, for this, we don't even have to use any documentation or anything for this. You can just literally say, I mean, you can even enter it into the rules. Like, let's create a new rule. So I do have the simple rules in user rules to use term color and print the crucial steps, and don't run files or pip install anything because we're going to use agent. Let's maybe we'll change that, but let's create a new rule saying general. And here we can say you are in, let's say you are in charge of designing the perfect AGI agent using tools, let's say function calling, because it'll know like how to do these things, right? We can here say use GPT-4o, for example. Uh, use GPT-4o, and without giving any documentation, we can just let it design it itself, right? We can say you have full creative control. Design this agent as you would like to become, or something like that. I mean, you can put any kind of goal you want here, right? And then we can just say here, we'll start with maybe Gemini. Also, I just noticed Claude 3.7 with thinking now consumes two times the fast requests. I think this is new. If you select max, that's 5 cents, but Sonnet now uses twice the requests. And then we can just say here begin. And like, I think this is what Andrei Karpathy meant with wipe coding. Like, I think it got confused with just regular AI assisted coding. Like, I think what Andrei Karpathy was saying with wipe coding is not to interfere with the so-called, quote unquote, creative process of the model, and just let it go, you know. Uh, yeah, see, it's like it does interesting stuff like that: thought, action, history, observation. It wants to register like a web search tool, code execution, but it did not use any API calls, right? So essentially, the point is you can keep asking it to, now it wants to create a more advanced implementation that integrates OpenAI's GPT-4o API. So this was kind of like a prelude, so to speak. Yeah, when you do it like this, you learn quite a lot actually. Uh, Maybe it becomes kind of like an inspiration for you. See, it created some memory and things like that. And here, it's it's trying to create. I'm trying to see if tools. Yeah, okay. I'm not sure if this will work. Let's run it. Let me search for chat.completions. I don't think it made a API call. Did it? Oh, it's creating a tools module. So it's really going. So it's not importing OpenAI. Yeah. So now that is creating a simulation. Now let's create an updated version of the main.py. Just going to bring it all together, but it's still not importing. But when I was doing this, I learned some stuff. For example, this like using functions to actually create the definitions and things like that, where I actually kind of lost track now where that was happening, and it's continuously just updating. Look at this. I mean, yeah. So let's maybe do it more grounded. So this is the whole idea, right? And then you can just keep saying continue, and then maybe ask it to summarize what it did or read through it. Like, see, it added web search, code execution, data analysis, file reading, image analysis. It's just an interesting exercise to see what it wants to do. But we can do better than this, I feel like. Maybe if we go to Anthropic docs and go to tool calling. I don't know if Anthropic is the best to use for this because if you use, essentially, if you go to tool use and read through it, you'll realize that um, the Anthropic's model, especially 3.7, is not good with um, parallel tool calling. It explains it somewhere over here. See, parallel tool call. So there's a warning. It says that Cloud 3.7 is less likely to make parallel tool calls for some reason. Uh, Parallel tool calls is enabled by default with this API. And then it says to work around this, we recommend enabling token efficient tool use, which is another thing that of their beta, which you can add by calling the beta.messages. I know it's a bit confusing, but that's the way it is. But I've actually tested this. That doesn't help much. Meaning the agent works just fine. It's just it makes each tool call one at a time. That's just the way it does it. Rather than being able to, in a single API call multiple tools. Then that kind of adds to the API cost because each tool, after you receive it, you have to add it back to its context, make another API call. So you're actually continually incurring, token costs. But that's just the way it is. But let's just continue with this because, like, there's another thing I wanted to mention. So we're going to copy this whole page because this is the entire documentation for tool use. But if you keep scrolling down, there are places here that are like drop downs. You want to open them up, and I'm pretty sure even if you were to scrape this, if unless maybe this is opened up, it may not see it. Especially like this is kind of important, I suppose. When, for example, if you're looking through a documentation and usually there's like JavaScript and then next to it there's Python, and if you click on it, it'll show you examples from JavaScript or Python. Like when you scrape a website, unless that particular tab is open, like it won't scrape it. So that's just the thing to remember. So let's open all of these tabs or drop downs because they all contain little informations like successful tool result, example tool with images. Open all these. Tool use examples, single, multiple, missing information, sequential. This is pretty interesting to read through also, and JSON mode. All right, so we don't need pricing, so we're just going to copy all of this to the top and bring it here and make maybe agent docs.txt. Paste all of this here, rename it properly, agent, and then let's create a new session. So we have agent docs here. Our general rules are going to go in there. So let's add, of course, use the model names exactly as in the examples, right? Because this agent doc is going to be an example. Also, when you're adding context to agent or composer, like if you type something, implement this, and then drag this in, see what happens is it adds it to the end. It also adds it to the top. Let me zoom in. I think what this means is it
Does
literally,
it stay for the next
yeah,
session? Like
yeah,
if you type this one in, does that it stays? That's one thing it seems like I've run into is where I drag it in and then it's gone the next time I hit send.
yeah. I think if you do it like this, it will be gone. But yeah, I think that happens. Also, another important thing is that like literally the context will read like implement this, and then this whole it's gonna be like this, right? Like
Oh,
it
okay.
literally puts it like implement this like that, like and then
Gotcha.
this your little message gets buried, and if it's also if you I think this is how it works, and then after that implement this and you add another file there, so now your
Hmm.
little thing is like after that, like your context is getting really weird like that.
Hmm.
That's I think I'm pretty sure this is how it happens, especially if you're attaching long files, but this is pretty long. A better way to do it, I think, is to actually go here, this little add button, and then find it and add it. I think this just prepends it. So when you write a message here, then your message goes at the bottom, right? Like implement this, something like that, which is way
Yeah.
better than having it like at the top or in the middle or something like that. And I think when you do it like that, it'll stay in the context, which we'll see. So let's also say design decisions you would like to become, referring to the documentation, right? So and then you just say here begin. That's about it. We can also maybe say uh, I don't know. Let's just yeah. I was gonna say create it in a single file or something like that. But oh, and we also wanted to use this Gemini 2.5 because it's hopefully it's better. But I also had I've been testing Gemini versus Sonnet, and I think they're pretty comparable. Like Gemini does better, maybe in more of the cases, but it's not like it is a huge lead or anything like that. Like, and I've seen sometimes in some cases Gemini make more mistakes. So I guess it's a good idea to see how agent docs stay in the context when you do it like that. Yeah, see, it did not create a file. Uh, Begin and create a file, let's say. So you can also read, user wants to start creating a file. I need to design an AGI agent using tools. Maybe goal, design an AGI agent using tools, core logic, basic tools, get better. Yeah, I hope you won't use get better because that's not, yeah, it is using get better. So obviously uh it's not doing what we want. It's not AGI, right? I mean, we wanted to kind of think, okay, well, how do you want to become sort of like if you could become an agent, what would be it's not obviously that's not going to be accomplished with get better. We also forgot something, right? Uh after each, let's say, after each modification and file creation, create and update a spec.txt file. This is kind of what I got from you, um, Kevin. It's like, is an example, but kind
Mhm.
of like a documentation, but not exactly a full documentation, rather. But it's like some simple list.
Yeah.
File is documentation, formatted as a simple list, which would be accurate representation of the features of our app, of the agent, let's say app, right? So if we want to add that, let's see if it'll follow it. Uh, when you are building the agent, be creative and envision it as how you would like to become. I think Gemini is actually bad for this kind of stuff. Maybe let's use 3.5 Sonnet thinking on. You can experiment, but
I would not disagree so far.
yeah, Gemini is way more cautious in my. And I have no idea why every time I let cursor build a website or something, it says Echo Hive. I don't know why where it gets that. Like I don't know if it is memory or something. Um, like like it says Echo Hive agent, which is a bit weird. Like I don't want that to happen. Like I don't
Hmm.
even know what memories it's keeping. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if it was keeping memories, I'd like to be able to see them.
Yeah, it would be nice to be able to kind of track how it is approaching the world in some way. If we had to dig into it while it's building out its code, it would be nice if we had some idea of what its internal representation was as it goes along.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But even ChatGPT now added to be able to refer to past uh, conversations beyond memories. I haven't experimented with it, but I hope they'll give an option to turn that off as well. But see, it's still struggling and not following the docs. So you'd have to we haven't saved it because I did turn off autosave because when you're typing these into the rules, like if you have autosave on, your cursor will just pop out of it. That's another bug. Let's try it again after having saved it because it didn't know about this envision how you would like to
Mm.
become. But we can take a look at the thoughts and see where it's going. But this is pretty much the idea, right? I've done this one time. It takes a bit convincing to get it going like this. Like it just wants to use weather tool still.
Mm.
Like maybe we need to say don't use the weather tool. Like that is just an example from the docs. Create tools which you would like to use as an agent. Yeah, let's try that. Let's try it again. And also use the API from the docs, which it should, but it's not doing that. If you look here, like it's not importing Anthropic. So
Mm.
you have to kind of nudge it. So these are a bit annoying, but once it does something like that, like gives itself like some file system tools or something like web search or something, then you know at least the direction is good, and then you can keep saying like improve yourself or something, and then it'll just do it. Maybe I mean this just as an example. Maybe oh, okay, you're right. We have this GPT 4.0 thing over there. Let's remove that. Thank you. Design an AGI agent. Okay, so this looks more promising. Have full creative control. Design it as how I would like to become. Okay, this is better. But I have done another experiment here. You're giving agent way too much leeway or control. You can actually change this wording to say, like, with a simple example of GPT-4 API with web search, and ask it to design a deep researcher like this. It's a bit difficult to get it going in its own with its own volition. I should say I don't know if it's volition, but in its own initiative. But once it gets going, it does pretty well. So two things here. Okay, it's now using say it created a web search, code interpreter, memory storage, more, and it's creating the tools here, creating a tool registry. So this is this is all to say all of this to say. This is a, this is, I think this is how Andre Karpati meant to do vibe coding. Secondly, you can give when you're bored or something and you just want to have fun, maybe just relax for a moment. You can get cursor going and learn from it, like how it does things, like the fact that it creates a tool registry and stuff. And more
Hmm.
importantly, the spec.txt file now mentions all these things. So previously, I was saying spec.md, but when I do the MD, I have this extension that just shows the MD file really nicely, but then I don't see the diffs like this, like the changes that it has made. So it was becoming more difficult as things get more complicated, like what has changed. See, it's planning features here,
Hmm.
such as image generation and analysis tool, voice input, output, system message. Let's accept this. And the core agent, I mean, I don't know what would happen. I hope nothing bad will happen. Let me run the main.py. Oh, yeah, okay, it is taking user input. Agent docs, say hi. Okay, good. Web search. I don't know how it's doing web search. Let's look. For real implementation, simulated. So it's doing simulated web search. But you can see here where you can grab some sample code from Exa or something, input it here and say update the web search. This code interpreter execute Python code. It's using eval. I don't know if that's safe. One of these things are not very safe. You
Hmm.
can ask it to make it safer. It'll probably do it itself. Write a Python, or let's say calculate 45 times 67 using Python. Okay, it wants to use code interpreter, but it's having error due to some logic. If I were to give this, it'll fix it. Let's actually do that quickly. Also, before doing that, all right. So once the spec.txt is created, the reason why I'm doing this is that so it knows what is implemented. So but I was hoping maybe this will give it an idea. Like maybe it won't remove the code interpreter like two requests down the road or something like that, right? And but it doesn't know. See, right now it created spec.txt and it's in its context, but maybe I thought a better way would be to actually add it manually. Once you add it, then it's going to stay there anyway if you add it through this add button. And you can also add here something like do not remove any features which are present in the spec.txt unless planned to be removed or something like that, whatever. And then so this way, like it's simple. You can keep track of it. Every time it updates, you can see what has been added. I know it's not a full documentation. Maybe this is not sufficient for larger projects, but at least some kind of an anchor. Like it'll see that it has memory storage, so hopefully, you won't try to go and delete that code, like and not and without which we wouldn't want. Essentially, we can fix this code, but let's not spend much time on it. We can say continue improving yourself because it's going to take time to do all that. And let's see what it does. Or we could have said continue improving the agent. Let's see what it wants to do. Several planned features. And the cool part with this spec is that you can actually change these before sending the message, right? Like I could have said image generation tool here, right? You can move things up and down, almost like setting up a I don't know Jira. I've never like priority list or
Hmm.
something like that
Hmm.
because it'll want to do the first things first. See, I'll go with adding file management tool, adding persistent memory. You can say something here, something like like implement uh, step by step, or you can say implement one feature at a time, right? We're not going to do that now, but you can. And I mean, I have done that, or you can say go slowly, that a junior developer can understand the code. Like, start from very basics and implement with small increments and things like that. And when you do that, it follows that. And it kind of, reins in on itself. It's creating different system templates and stuff, like default, creative, technical, professional. It's adding new tools for memory, delete, and all that. Look at the spec. Yeah, see, it deleted the file management. It added the system template, so it's deleting it. More specialized. So it wants to add like it wants to improve that further down the road. When we said this, it picked these three things and implemented it. If we were to say one feature at a time, it would have probably picked file management tools. So it deleted them from planned features and add them here. So that's pretty cool. Uh, Another thing which I should have maybe mentioned in the beginning, I'm just experimenting with these. So essentially, like to say, write tests for each feature, and after implementation, test and debug by running the tests, something like that. And and then we can say run tests here. Normally we have to say this, but if we had this ahead of time, it would have hopefully have done it itself. Yeah. So you know, by using a combination of spec.txt and running tests, you may have an easier time debugging, debugging rather than copy pasting all this stuff. You cannot rely on it to write perfect tests, obviously, and sometimes it will make errors writing the tests themselves. I actually was doing this yesterday with a web app. Web apps are difficult to run tests for. It was trying to write it with Playwright and all that, and that can become a bit problematic. But for like applications that are running in terminal, I think it should be just fine. And also now it is a bunch of tools which we don't even know much about. We need to implement some safety checks. Like it is an execute tool, can execute code, so that can be dangerous. The code interpreter. It doesn't have a read file. It can read file. It can write file. Okay, it didn't add delete file, so at least that's good. It created test agents, test tools, and it's creating run tests, test integration. So it's getting really complicated. So tests themselves can become like bigger than your own project. Like the project, I think it has already become larger than the project we're building. But when you write good tests, I realized you can actually pick up errors and fix them pretty much automatically. Test integration. It's updating the spec. That's the important part, I suppose. Now, maybe it's really maybe good to start with something simple like this, because at any point in time you can say create a more detailed documentation about using the spec file, and maybe it'll go and explain how the web search is done, maybe like whatever you're using for the web search, right? And that may be helpful, at least in the beginning. This I like because it gives me a simpler idea of what's going on. Run the tests, although now this is going to clash with its rule, don't run files, we said, but Now it found an error in the test. I think it did. At least it thought it did. Yeah, it noticed issues. Okay, it wants to run it. Now it's running. Tests failed. Now we have no idea if these tests were written correctly and got some issues to fix. Five failures, code interpreter, key error,
Mhm.
process tool use failure. Uh, Maybe it caught this error, possibly, hopefully, the one that we were going to pass to it. Yeah, but be careful with tests because unless, maybe it's good to learn about tests because, you know, it adds this a whole new layer of complexity, which also is super good. Obviously, if the tests are good, uh, but maybe it's good to start with a single file. Like even our agent is separated into multiple files, and our test is separated into multiple files. Maybe it's good to start with a single file for the agent, a single file for the test, and slowly, in a more controlled manner, expand it. It's running it and it says tests failed. Yeah. See, it wants to fix the tests because the tests are problematic. So I'm going to stop it. This was just to demonstrate. And I'm going to go back to the part where we didn't have tests. Continue improving yourself. I wish there was a way in cursor to go like stepwise to the previous message. Sometimes these little input boxes can get lost. Test spec. Sorry, run tests. I think we need to come back here. Okay, yeah. Instead, we can just say continue improving yourself, continue improving, and then it should pick up the next image generation and analysis tools. It'll use DALI. Oh, no, maybe not. I don't know what it'll use. So now, if you wanted to do this properly, right, uh, maybe I won't provide this code because we're not doing it like actually building it. I won't provide this code in the Patreon post because I don't know if there's any like it has a code interpreter and stuff. I don't want people running it and maybe something bad happens. But what was I going to say? Oh, for each part of the code, like if you were to provide it in the agent docs.txt, like this is what we will use for web search, like exa, for example, API or something, then it'll do better. Another thing is you can ask it to like perform web searches here, like for web searches for APIs you need to use or something like that. You can do that and it will perform web search. But that's that if you put it in the rules, you're kind of expecting the model to pick that up and realize exactly when to do it. Better way would be maybe to type it here, like implement exa AI API web search, and I say perform web search to find the latest API calls to do this or something like that. And it will do it. It will do this for the most part. Like it'll perform web search and it'll search to X's API. But some it's going to be hit or miss if you were to provide the code yourself in a well organized way, either in a agent docs or something like that, or right here in the text message. Sorry, in the message itself, like just a little code snippet, like use this for a web search or something. It wants to use pill and stuff, so I'm curious what kind of. Generate image. This is a simplified placeholder for image generation. In real implementation, we would use DALI or Stable Diffusion, which we wouldn't want to use maybe Together API. But this creates some kind of gradient image and returns it as a placeholder. But each one of these tools are in their own function. And analyze image is also doing some kind of stuff like such as the width height format. But we can instead use here vision, for example, right? Things like that. And it wants to write tests because we have this tests here, maybe. We didn't want this, maybe. Delete that. And we can stop it because it wanted to write tests. Okay, let's accept all this. Let's just experiment with this. You implement XAI web search. So it's searching. After it searches, you can see the search results to see if it's actually hitting the right URLs. It also updated the spec, right? Or maybe it didn't have time to update it. No, it did. It wants to move on to advanced image generation with DALI, voice input output. Yeah, if you expand this, it says no results found. And then see it went back to the X's actual documentation, so that's good. Now it's searching for Python SDK example. So it does a pretty good, decent job at search. And after this, we'll move on to the thing. Cursor becomes any app where this will become more apparent. Like, I mean, it has a pretty good search functionality. Look what it did. It searched for something, couldn't find results, searched for another, found the right places, but it searched for Python SDK. That's exactly what I would have done, right?
Hmm.
Because we're using Python, found no results. Maybe that's a bug, and then later found these Python SDK, and now it's updating tools.py to implement this. Should update this. Yeah, so see, yeah, once you use OS environment.git, I think this should work. Another thing maybe to put is I don't use .env files. I think this should work, and I like to use getenv, and that's good to put here into rules or into the MDC rules. I mean, the way you want to retrieve the API keys. But like, see, it implemented it. Number of results. This function gets a tool input. Tool input includes a query and number of results. Otherwise, it's 5. So agent can decide. Let's actually run this and see if it'll perform. Um, oh, it's updating main.py. We'll wait for that. It's just, sometimes slow to wait for all these things. Yeah, so I like the spec idea because it plans the features. You can explicitly say to do this, but every time I did it, it adds it, and you can actually modify this plan features yourself. Like you can move the priorities up and down, right? It's updating the spec. See, it's additional search engines he wants to do maybe later. It's also creating a README, even though we didn't ask for it. Search for latest AI news. Oh, is it okay? So we got the same error. We can say we are getting this error with tool calls. I think I think it should be able to fix it because agent docs is still attached. Like we probably didn't need this at some point. Once, I mean, if we were to test this properly and know that it can make tool calls, uh, at that point it is enough information in the code that it wrote, rather, because this is taking up space in its context and can actually lead to higher credit usage with cursor. It thinks it found the issue. Maybe we should have set it to refer to the agent docs.txt. I found sometimes that even though you put stuff in its context, it just can ignore it.
Hmm.
You could maybe we could should have said pay attention to agent docs when doing this, so it ends up having an easier time. Maybe let's while this is well, it's going to be done soon. Let's also do count lines to see how many lines of code we've written. Count lines of code from all .py files in current working directory. 1,000 lines, and not much. Okay, main.py is updated. Search for latest AI news. Yeah, see, one tool request is follow-up request, and it answers. The record funding round. Yeah, this depends on how many, depends on the quality of the search that Exa returned, but it knew about funding round, which is recent. So we know that the search worked because this is not Cloud 3.7's knowledge cutoff date is November last year. This happened after that. Yeah, so that's about it. Maybe we can say calculate 45 times 65 using code. Once you use code interpreter, yeah, maybe I should provide the code. I just don't want it to run some bad code or something. Um, maybe I'll put a I'll provide the code and provide a warning that it has a code interpreter. Because this is interesting. Maybe this will give you guys ideas. Maybe you can build on top of this or something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, so there's all kinds of display help. Oh, so we have a help thing. Let's see. We can do exclamation mark help, and it gives us help. Oh, we can change personality, right? We forgot about that. It added these system messages. Well, let's test that. It says mode creative. Maybe we don't do this. Oh, okay. See, I yeah, change system message to creative. Yeah, see, whether you're looking for a short story or poem, it's nice. So yeah, that's that. Um, and the next thing I wanted to talk about is this cursor becomes any app, where I'm going to make a longer video on this on 1000x, but I just wanted to just quickly go over this. Like you can make cursor do all sorts of things without needing MCPs or anything like that. I mean, I don't want to talk against MCPs. They're great, but for simple tools like uh, to write an MCP server seems to me a bit of a hassle. But MCPs are great. Maybe if somebody else wrote the server for you, like what is it? I forgot the name. Like Superbase or something, and it helps you perform something which would have been a difficult tool for you to write. In those cases, I think they're great. But
Browser tools is really cool for checking your
yeah.
console logs on browser apps. Yes.
Oh, okay. See, that's a good one. Maybe I should use that. Are you on Windows, Kevin?
Yep.
So MCPs are working. How long it,
Oh,
it,
so
it
I've not in Cursor. In Klein, I can make the MCPs work for me. Um,
but
but
cursor
haven't been
is
able to.
not
Yeah.
working, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they should fix that. Cursor researcher. Yeah, we talked about this. Like cursor data scientist. Let's take a look at this. Or I thought I had it here. I'm sorry. Let me see. Agent cursor. Is it here? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I should move that. My bad. Should agent cursor goes into this folder. Okay, like let's take a look at this, right? Essentially, you can create a tools.py file with functions, any function, right? And each one of these is going to be a tool. You can call GPT, for example. And all you really have to do is mention to in your rules that this exists. Here in this case, we're saying you have functions which you can use as tools. They're in tools.py file, which is in the current working directory. Actually, that's all you need. You don't you don't need or and this use these tools as they're needed. You don't need to give it a list of it. You don't. Alternatively, instead of giving it a list, you can just pass on this whole thing. Your current tools are like so it knows which each function is. But you don't even have to do that. You can delete all of this, and except it just doesn't know what tools it has. Check this file after each user request. The thing is, it wants to know which tools, right? Maybe let's not put this here. And we have a tool like that calls GPT-4o Mini. Uh, let me go back here. So some people were having trouble creating new tab. Like this creates a new composer, and it says Control T to create a new tab. But if you do Control T, it'll bring up this command line, whatever. You have to, and if you're here and do Control T, it'll create, like if you're clicked in here on the side panel somewhere, then Control T creates a new chat. Just remember that. Call GPT-4o and say hello. So all that it knows right now, or let's remove these tools. Okay, so it doesn't have any context except except this. It wants to look at read tools.py, so it'll read it and it finds it and it calls it. Yeah, and then it gets a response. So this is how you can use tools, right? Any tool really, and you don't really like simple instructions is all you need, but you can uh, give it a list as well. If you give it a list, then it will be less likely to read the tools.py, so it will save you some time, but it'll sometimes read it anyway. Yeah, see, it still wants to read the tools.py. Let's see if we were to give this entirely, will it read it? Yeah, he still wants to read it. So you can give it or not. If you don't give any other information, it wants to read the tools.py anyway, and it knows to call it. Before with 3.5, I've tried this before. It would try to write a script, and we'd have to say all kinds of stuff in the rules to say don't use the CLI arguments. If you see here using the -c command, it's literally just running a temporary Python code in the command line. It just 3.7 just knows to do that. I think you can use Gemini as well. Yeah, yeah. See, it wants to write a file. So 3.7 is really good with that. It wants to import it. So this was the issue with 3.5, but 3.7 just does it almost always. So this is one way to really create any type of tool for Cursor to use other than the tools that it has, right? Because Cursor already has tools. Like you can edit files, you can write the files, you can read from files, you can execute command line commands, you can do web search. So those are already pretty powerful tools for it to use. So so there's two ways to do this then. Convert Cursor into any app you like. One is to define tools. Another way is to actually just instruct it Cursor Researcher. Yeah, so you're a deep research assistant which researches user given topics in depth using web search. Always follow these steps exactly in order. Ask three relevant questions which can assist you in researching the user's topic and write them to a relevant research questions.txt file. Search for each relevant question. Create a markdown file with final report as well as a HTML file. So if you how long will future eras of humans will last with AI technologies and closely in mind if you run this? So there's no tools or anything, right? This is just simple rule. You can just describe and it wrote the relevant questions and it's going to ask each one of these questions in sequence and web search results automatically goes into its context and then it will create those two reports. You can make this as complex as you like, right? You can make it go ask 10 questions and ask three questions about each one of the 10 questions. Eventually you'll run into some kind of limit here, right? And if you find other more creative use cases, let me know. I'll try to make videos on them. So these are some that I found. Like this literally doesn't like this one is pretty great because Cursor comes with its own set of tools which you can use, like to convert it into a researcher. And remember that you can just write the files. Like you can let it just keep writing the files, and eventually you'll have a whole collection of like maybe small research reports, which you can then ask it to synthesize or something. It's taking too long. Let's try it again. And we don't need the thinking. Let's turn it off. When I first opened this, maybe I should have just shown it. There was already a markdown file and an HTML file. Like it'll search these and create reports. Their search is not working right now, maybe. Let me stop this. Can I bring those back? I can't. Okay, maybe we won't wait for this. Well, you know what? We'll let it do its thing while we're talking about this third thing. So this, I would just maybe bring up ChatGPT, uh, Claude. Yeah, and you can have others too, like Gemini, and turn on search on each one of them. If you have Gemini, Gemini doesn't have that option, but it's on always. Maybe use 4.5, but it's going to be slow. But you know, I was as like last night I was asking this question, for example, how much more, like how many more GPUs we need for an real-time AI generated video service like Netflix. So you can ask it. The beauty of this is you can ask the Grok too. Grok actually works pretty well. I was surprised by how well Grok works. So if you're not selecting deep
Hmm.
research or anything, Grok will search automatically. It's just it searches pretty good. So maybe let's bring it here. So each one is going to answer and see. ChatGPT seems to be the worst in these sometimes. Yeah, sometimes it requires some pushing forward. So frame rate, see, Grok is considering key assumptions. Let's assume 4K resolution, 30 frames, uh, high-end GPUs, estimating GPU requirement. So see, Sora generates 5 minutes of 1080p video per hour on one H100 GPU. Scaling to 4K reduces this to 125. Make some assumptions. At 30 frames, 1 minute 4K video equals 1800 frames if one blah blah. Then it does some calculations. It calculates 48 H100 GPUs per viewer for real-time 4K generation. Assuming 10 million simultaneous users, it says we need 480 million H100 equivalent GPUs. Like uh, essentially, and then like how about for real-time image generation? Uh, This is maybe this is pretty rudimentary for people who've been doing this, but I don't usually do this, and I feel maybe silly for not having done it. Meaning, I just saw a tweet somebody saying that you're using large language models wrong. Meaning, you only want from large language model just to give you information or do something. Like somebody was saying, you should use it more like a regular person or something. Like you should just talk to them. And this is still trying to get something out of large language models, but at least a little bit more iterative. Here it says this assumes optimization 200. So for real-time area generated video, you'll need. So it kind of misunderstood us. Maybe where did we ask? Didn't we ask for image generation? Oh yeah, how about for real-time generation? Okay, real-time image generation, and you can say considering the latest GPT-4o multimodal image gen. The whole point of this was that you can ask little questions because once you get an answer to one thing, you can then this gives you idea about asking a second question rather than triggering deep search and just not knowing what questions it's going to ask and things like that. And it takes a whole 10 minutes to get an answer because see, it also gives you, especially Grok, like little. interesting things like Mostak. Mostak was the CEO of Emad, was the
Hmm.
CEO of Stability, which creates stable diffusion. And then, I'm saying you can branch into different research areas, keep asking. And let's say it says real time image generation for 1 million users at 4K resolution demands 10 to 15 million H100 GPUs, which believe will happen eventually when it can happen. But uh, after that, you can, like, we asked two questions, but imagine asking 4 or 5 questions, and you can grab this and give it to your model of choice and ask it to, summarize the main points, or you can bring it to Notebook LM and ask it to create a podcast or, analyze it here. Paste text, insert. Uh, Again, I guess maybe this is obvious to some people, but because web search is so much quicker, you can get the information you want in increments and then do something with it at the end if you wanted to. That is, see key findings. Yeah, you know, and that's it. Let's come back here. Yeah, so it did perform searches. See 3 searches. You can see, okay, all of the web searches failed. I don't know if it actually failed, but it created this port, and then it created this HTML. It's nice, right? So you can do this. Anyway, this is all I wanted to talk about. Hope you found it useful. If you guys have any questions or something, please let me know. It's all good then?
All good, as
Uh,
always.
yeah, thank you. I'll put the code for this. I'll just write. Just be careful using it because it is a code interpreter and it uses eval. I think. Yeah, eval, which is not secure or something. I'm not sure, but just be careful with that. I mean, nothing will happen unless it writes some bad code, which is very unlikely, but still, delete files or something like that, or format your hard drive, God forbid. Anyway, thanks for being here, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Have a great Sunday.
Bye, everybody.